Today's co-host is my cutie Patootsy. Say hello, Kashi. Kashi. Look how handsome he is. Right, cutie? I want to show you who decided to join us today. You know the fastest way to lose yourself and give away your power? It's to constantly obsess whether people like you or not. There was a time in my life when my actions were heavily dictated on what I should do to be liked. And not only that, in every room I entered, every day I woke up, the question was, what can I do today for them to accept me or like me? It's not just limited to friendships, but it also was the same thing for somebody that I was romantically interested in, or even just waking up at home every day. It was a constant mental puzzle as to what I should do in order to be liked and accepted, not just by the people that I went to school with or the people that I wanted to be socially connected with, but also in my family. Growing up in a volatile environment where being liked was the bare minimum to survive without getting yelled at, without feeling rejected, and just experiencing even a minute of peace. So I went through my entire life always approaching things from the perspective of doing something to gain somebody else's validation, approval, or admiration, or acceptance. It was exhausting. And because of that, I was able to create this persona that on the outside appeared like none of it was a big deal, that I didn't really care. But it was a shield that I had to put on to mask the real feelings that I was hiding. And that was me being hurt by the constant rejection. So much so that I've become numb to it eventually. So as not to say too that it stopped hurting. I still feel the sting every now and then, but I was also able to work my way around it by leaning towards being indifferent majority of the time. But the hurt was still there, and I carried that around me until the day that I accidentally flipped the switch. Right now, if you go on social media, you will constantly see people posting about rejection in many forms, like people not supporting them, or just generally feeling like the friends that or the people that they're connected to don't like them. And it's not like it's a novel idea. If we actually go back to evolutionary history, being rejected by people or a group meant something similar to death. So, for example, in the past, when you had no tribe, that means you had no protection, no shared food, and no opportunities to mate. So, the brain evolved systems specifically designed to scan constantly for social approval or disapproval. The brain processes social rejection the same circuitry as physical pain. So there were actually studies that showed when somebody was socially rejected, the same area in the brain also that conveyed physical injury also lit up. So when somebody's wondering, do they like me? Did I do something wrong? Did I say something wrong? Am I being judged? They're not being dramatic. It's just the brain literally responding if there is a threat to their survival currently present. This is why we constantly begin to monitor facial expressions, adjust our personality, downplay our opinions, laugh at things that we don't even find funny, or agree when we don't even mean to. This is to reduce the probability of rejection. You know, I actually remember at many points in my life I have written about this, and it's that approval activates the reward systems in our brain. Let's use social media as an example. When we post and then somebody likes it or comments or engages with it, that is a form that is a form of social validation. Our brain interprets that as acceptance and approval. So when you receive the validation or praise or inclusion, dopamine pathways and the ventral striatum in our brain activates, and this is the same system involved in rewards like food or winning money. So over time, so now this is why people get addicted to social media, because over time it creates conditioning. You post, you get approval from engagement, your dopamine spikes, and then you repeat the behavior. So people unconsciously learn, if I act this way, people will start to like me. Oh no, if I act this way, this is how I should be acting because this is how I get people to like me. Or if I keep saying this, I get more engagement. Then if I get more engagement, then I'm accepted. And this is how approval-seeking behavior becomes habitual. And often, a large part of this pattern is formed in childhood. As children, we depend entirely towards our primary caregivers for survival. So if love, attention, or safety was conditional, the brain learns that acceptance must be earned. So in psychology, they call this externalized self-worth. So instead of being internally anchored with our identity, our brain learns to constantly ask, am I still safe here? Am I still wanted? And that question can follow into adulthood without us realizing it. I never actually considered any of these things when I was in survival mode, when my whole existence depended entirely on survival. You know what I noticed? That people are actually prone to behaving these things, often develop a survival identity because they were deprived of safety, approval, love, and affection at a very young age. They learned survival coping mechanisms to get through the day or to get through a certain period of time until they feel safe again. You know how I stumbled onto all these things? It was during a walk with Champ at night, and I kept thinking and asking myself questions. Why do I keep behaving like this? Like, it's obviously not working. It's not serving me for my well-being. So what prompted me to start behaving this way? What prompted me to continue to seek validation and acceptance from other people? So the constant questions that I kept asking myself somehow unlocked the answers. And maybe I've always known it, a soul level, or a subconscious level, but the doors of my subconscious didn't actually open and give me the answers until I was ready to understand and receive them. And from then on, I understood that I have created an identity based on survival. And that was just how I was behaving the entire time. I wasn't existing. I wasn't a living person. I was just a walking trauma response, a walking survival mechanism, trying to get through life. And then that's how I started and made the decision to completely shed everything that I knew, unlearn every behavior, every coping or survival mechanism that I keep employing, and replace that with actual behaviors that make me feel alive. When I started to completely give myself to healing and understanding my pain, forming a relationship with it to the point that it made its own decision to leave my body and empty my vessel in order for me to make space for the woman that I was always supposed to be and supposed to become. For a minute there, I had no idea what was gonna happen next, what was going on, but I did ask this question. Now that all the pain and all that survival behaviors that helped me get through up to today, what is left of me now? That's when it all started, and that's how I rediscovered core characteristics that I have that was always mine. I was also able to separate the ones that I just picked up along the way in order for me to be liked and in order for me to survive. And I also was able to separate desires, behaviors, thinking that was just instilled upon me or projected onto me. And I started to function on the baseline traits that I was able to rediscover about myself. And that is that I love to find meaning in many things. I am smart. I am creative. I am funny. I am generous. I am kind. I have strong boundaries. And I like to make people included, but not at the expense of my well-being. And I don't let my empathy lead 100% of the time. I am able to empathize with people, but if I see that it is going to subject me to exploitation, or it's going to make me set myself aside or sacrifice my well-being in order to make other people comfortable, then I was able to file that under survival mechanisms. So when that happened, it kind of gave me the confidence that I'm actually pretty cool. And why was I going through life wondering if people like me when I'm very likable to begin with? Why was I so insecure about not being accepted when my baseline qualities suggest that I don't operate from the need to use other people or step on them to get ahead? I don't have innate urges to exploit people or use people just to feel good about myself. And that's how I started to gain confidence in who I am. And I started liking myself, started enjoying my own company, because I thought, if I like and accept myself, who I am is the kind of person I want to surround myself with, then I should begin to improve my relationship with myself. And this is how I started to develop a stable internal identity and self-acceptance. And this system was so different that it started running the show. Before, I was dictated by the need for acceptance, and that need for acceptance came from a wound of belonging, because I've always felt like I was rejected anywhere I went. Every decision that I made stemmed from insecurity or the desperation to belong in something or a collective. That's why I tailored an existence that was designed to seek validation and hunger for other people's approval and acceptance, which was totally opposite and incompatible with my true essence. It was not my soul's design. It was not my operating system. And so now I understand that every time I walk into the room, they first feel my magnetism and my charisma. But then when I start operating, and then when I start opening my mouth, and then they get to hear my ideas, my perspective on things, which is riddled with insecurity and fear and anxiousness that I shouldn't even have. People get the ick. Now I get it. I get the ick. Now that I think about it, like if you ask me today if I would be friends with a younger version of myself, I have compassion for her, but I don't think me would be friends with that girl. I will be there for her when she asks for help or when she needs me, when she needs guidance, but to be connected closely and have a relationship, it might be tough. I wouldn't be friends with her, but I will be there for her. That's all I can say. So now that I was able to establish my own identity and start liking who I am, brain started to shift into value-based evaluation instead of monitoring for approval. And then one of the major things that happened is that my brain stopped interpreting social evaluation as a threat. You know, there are actually studies about this, that when you have clarity on your self-concept, people with a stable identity often exhibit lower amygdala activation in response to social judgment, which means that the constant background of asking, will they like me? If I do this, will they accept me? Will I finally belong? Those questions begin to disappear. And it's not because of forced confidence, but it's because the threat signal has dissipated. When we stop scanning for approval and the signal for looking for threats has quieted down, the prefrontal cortex begins to take over and makes active social decisions. So instead of asking, do these people like me? Your brain begins asking higher order questions like, do I respect this person? Do their values align with mine? Do I want this dynamic in my life? And you go from monitoring yourself into monitoring your environment. Then your identity becomes the reference point. When our identity starts to stabilize, our brain stops using other people as a measuring stick. And this is what psychology calls internal locus of evaluation. So instead of us asking, how am I being perceived? The brain begins asking, is this aligned with who I am? And once that happens, a lot of social dynamics change automatically. And this is how a lot of friendships die. Because when you stop playing that game, those dynamics that was built on just mutual approval seeking, woundedness, trying to perform to be liked, you realize that they were never genuine alignment in the first place. So a lot of people feel uncomfortable about this, and then some relationships fade and environments start to feel incompatible. And this is not because you've become arrogant or detached. It's just that your brain stopped organizing behavior around avoiding rejection. So before you, when you, like, a lot of us develop. So now when you have finally start developing and stabilizing in the identity that you crafted from wholeness, confidence, and healing and love, your existence stops becoming about secure belonging, and it becomes about evaluating compatibility. And that's why the questions stop becoming about, do they even like me? And so the questions that we start to ask around social situations is no longer, do they like me? And it flips into becoming, do I even like them? Those dynamics that was built on mutual approval seeking, woundedness, trying to perform to be liked, you realize that they were never genuine alignment in the first place. So A lot of people feel uncomfortable about this, and then some relationships fade and environments start to feel incompatible. And this is not because you've become arrogant or detached. It's just that your brain stopped organizing behavior around avoiding rejection. When you have finally start developing and stabilizing in the identity that you crafted from wholeness, confidence, and healing and love, your existence stops becoming about secure belonging, and it becomes about evaluating compatibility. And that's why the questions stop becoming about do they even like me. And so the questions that we start to ask around social situations is no longer do they like me, and it flips into becoming do I even like them. And this is why I've become the loudest proponent of spending time alone, figuring out who you are, establishing an identity, because I know what it feels like to not have one and only operate from the constant anxiety and insecurity of wanting to be accepted, liked, and validated by other people, to becoming somebody who's just comfortable if I don't get any, and that I'm just happy that about who I am, and I just have this confidence and trust that if I continue to live my life just doing right by myself and for other people without exploiting them or without using them as a tool to alleviate some insecurity that I have within me, then I am sure that the right people who I'm supposed to be connected to will eventually find me. At this moment, they're not here yet, but I am currently enjoying my own company and the identity that I have crafted to grow into the woman that God believes I should be, the woman that He believes has the power, the strength, the confidence, and the capability to carry out any mission that He has for me in this lifetime. So if any of the things that I've just said resonated so strongly with you, and maybe we were supposed to walk the same path, and I would be glad to walk this path with you. So it's worth considering just eating the cost of the price that we need to pay in order to live a life free of anxiety and chokehold from other people's approval, and to fully stepping into your power and living your life, making decisions based on who you are and not who likes you or what wound needs to be quiet today. So stop organizing your life around being liked, and then you realize that a lot of the things will start rearranging themselves. Yes, some relationships may start to lose their pull and it stops being compatible. Some environments stop being comfortable to be in, and a lot of the dynamics that we used to find comfort in will suddenly start to feel exhausting. And it's not because you've become colder and more judgmental, but because the reference point changed. Now it's no longer about wounds and insecurities or desperation. It's about your values and who you are. Your identity no longer seeks to negotiate every interaction. You already know who you are, and once that happens, the questions that will guide your life is no longer about do they like me? It becomes much simpler and much more honest. Do I even like being here? And maybe you stumbled upon this video because you have actually reached a point where you want to stop internally calculating whether the people around you approve of you or that they like you or they accept you. You just didn't have the words for it before. You weren't able to articulate it until now. And that's the best thing about finally liking who you are, because you start to see things clearly. You stop wanting to be around people based on what they can do to your nervous system, how they can quiet an anxiety if you're around them, into becoming about the quality of their character and the way they treat others, and the values that they live by. So today I urge you to choose yourself. And if you don't know who that self is just yet, give yourself grace. If you think that's a lot of work and you don't know who you are yet, let me leave you with this. If there is one thing if there is one thing worth investing time in, is building a strong sense of who you are. Because once your identity is clear, you stop living life shaped by other people's acceptance. You stop adjusting yourself just to belong somewhere. Instead, you move through the world with a much simpler filter. Does this align with who I am or not? And when you live that way, the question that used to dominate everything, whether people like you or not, loses its power entirely. At the end of the day, the real work isn't getting people to accept you. The real work is developing an identity that you genuinely stand behind. And make that your foundation. Stop trying to rearrange yourself for every room. Stop trying to rearrange yourself for every room that you walk into or every person that you meet. Move through life from a place of clarity instead of negotiation. And once you embrace that, and once that becomes once that becomes natural to you, the questions that used to dominate your decisions will fade away, and it's no longer about whether you're liked. Rather, it's about whether the people, environments, and relationship around you actually deserve to have a place in your life.